Hello, my name is Janie Watanabe, and I'm here to ask you a question. Do you suffer with unforgiveness, with wanting to be vengeful at someone? You might even wish they were dead because of what they've done to you or to your family. I totally understand that because I've been through it myself. And I want to tell you my story regarding how I overcame that. And the reason I say overcame that is because the person that did what they did to you or a family member is not affected by how you feel about them at all. You're the one that's affected by it, because what happens to you is you become imprisoned in this nasty ugliness called unforgiveness, vengefulness, anger, hatred, and it just engulfs you and it can make you sick. Because I'm a Christian, I knew the Bible says vengeance is not mine, it's God's, and He can take care of it much better than I ever could. And that was a battle I had. Let me tell you the story. My father was murdered by my stepmother. And the way I found out, I lived in California at the time, my father lived in Indiana, was that we got a phone call from a childhood friend who was absolutely sobbing. And she said to me, Janie, I thought you knew, but Daddy didn't think you did. So that's why I'm calling you, because when they took your dad out on the gurney from his house, the news said that his children in Michigan had been notified. And we knew there were none of you in Michigan. None of you lived in Michigan. And so Daddy said, I should probably call you. In between her tears and her crying, she got the words out. And she said the reason they believe it was my father is because it was his home. The man was the same age as my dad, which was 54 years old. So I said to her, in my shock and confusion, my whole body shaking inside, I need to get off the phone. I need to make a phone call to the police department back in Indiana. And she said, okay. We hung up. I called the South Bend, Indiana Sheriff's Department, and I said to them, they answered the phone, and I said, hello, my name is Janie Whitehead, and I understand there's been a murder in my father's house, and I need to know if it was him. The lady on the other end said, excuse me, who did you say you were? I explained again. She said, hold on, please. She put me on hold. Every ounce of my body is shivering and shaking. I was a mess, ready to throw up. And then after the wait, which seemed like forever, a man got on the phone and he said, hello, this is Sergeant Seneff. How may I help you? And I told him the same thing. I said, this is Janie Whitehead, and I understand Claude Whitehead, my father, may have been murdered, and I need to know if the person that was murdered was my father. It was dead silent on the other end. And he said, where are you located? I said, California. He said, who did you say you were? So I explained it again. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't give you that information. And I said, why? I need to know. He said, you've got to come down to the station and identify yourself. I said, I can't do that. I'm in California, you're in Indiana. Can you please tell me if this was my father? I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't do that. And so I hung up the phone after arguing with him for a few more minutes, and I dialed my brother, who was working for TRW at the time. I couldn't even dial the phone. I had to get my husband to push the buttons because I was shaking so badly. And my brother answered, and I told him what had happened and that the police would not verify whether it was our father or not. Well, it just so happened that he worked closely at TRW with the FBI. So they notified the FBI, and the FBI made a couple phone calls and then confirmed to my brother that, yes, it was our father that had been murdered. So we got off the phone, made plans to go back to South Bend, both of us angry, full of vengeance, hatred, but confused because we couldn't figure out who in the world would do such a thing. So we get to we go there, and we go to the funeral home because my father had already been transferred over. And I walked to the doorway of the room where he was, and my childhood friend met me there, and she said, I just want you to know that this is not a very friendly atmosphere in here. Your stepmother won't acknowledge that any of us are here. And there's another woman that says she's his wife. And I'm going, oh my God, what in the world? So we walked in, and we were talking amongst each other. I went over to my stepmother. She was very cold and brief, but said hello. And I said, can we talk to you later during the day? And she said, call me and I'll see if it'll work out that you can come over. So she didn't even want to talk to us. She didn't want to have anything to do with us. Later that evening, my brother and I went over to my dad's house, which is where she was living, my stepmother, and we knocked on the door, and she didn't come right away. We knocked again, and she opened the door just a crack. And we said, look, we're here to help you. I know this is quite a shock for you. Can we come in? And she hesitated, but finally let us come in. And we sat on the couch across from her. She sat on the wingback chair. And we talked about what needed to be done within a few days because we needed to get back to our jobs and that. And my brother got up to go to the bathroom. And when he did, she said to me, look, you don't have to worry about anything because your father transferred everything, all his savings, all his stocks and bonds, everything over to me just a couple weeks ago. The only thing you're gonna get is this house. And I thought, why would she even talk to us like that? But I just let it go. My brother came out and we left. But at that point, I knew that she probably had something to do with it. We went to the sheriff's office the next day, and the sheriff said to us, we know who did it, but we can't do anything about it. We've been trying to get this woman for 30 years, but she's so good at what she does, she's a syndicate operator, that we can't nail her on anything. And there's no evidence at that house. There's nothing. So we left there and went to Benix Corporation where my father had worked and talked about everything there and what was going to happen with his insurance and with this and that. And it had all been transferred over to my stepmother already. So we left, and we had to find an attorney to help us to see if we can unravel this mess. And who was this other woman that said she was also my dad's wife? Well, it turned out that was a lie. My dad had dated her and left her for my stepmother, who had helped him when he had a broken down car, and she gave him her keys of her car to get home, even though they hardly knew each other. Well, what we didn't know at the time is this is something that she and her sister do. The sister is a syndicate operator. She has hitmen. She's got She does a lot of things. And my mother-in-law had just been served divorce papers because my father realized she really didn't love him. She just wanted his money. He gave her money to fill the freezer, and she used the money to put tires on our 34-year-old son's car. He gave her money for other things, and the money somehow disappeared. And she never had an explanation for it except for her children, who were now adults, 30 and 40 years old.